live casts. Oh, I gotta hit the button. There we go. There are two buttons I have to hit.
Nice.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Dunne and Dunne live cast, world building. So that you know where you're in the right spot, hopefully. And here we are.
Yeah.
So here's our very first episode. This week we wanted to discuss something. Let me actually pull that up again.
We're going to talk about genre,
Yes.
themes, and style. Not that kind of style.
Any kind of style, really. It's
Yep.
fine. It's fine.
My hat's all out of focus. Me.
All right.
Meh.
So, we're going to talk a little bit about some of these kind of like building exercises, I guess you'd say, for lack of a better word. And these are true no matter what your genre is. If you're talking about anything really, any sort of world building that you would do, you need to know your theme. You need to know your genre. Hi, Marwan. How you doing? Good to see you.
Marwan!
So you want to talk about your genre, your theme, and your style.
Style. So, let me just do a little quick definition of the three things that we're talking about, right?
Do that.
So, genre is like
Genre.
genre. if you're Alex Trebek, it's genre, or it's really nothing at all because, unfortunately, he's deceased. So
That's fair.
give me one moment.
Just one moment, please. Un momento, por favor. Is doozle.
Dog trying to eat Apache tears.
Well, you know.
That sounds a lot
Sometimes-
worse than it is. It's a stone, folks.
It's a stone. Yeah, she Sometimes if you're a dog and you don't have a place to put your Apache tears, you gotta eat them. I guess.
Yeah, you
I don't know.
take them on the inside. Take them internally. To be
Take 'em
taken
internally.
internally.
So yeah.
Apply directly to the head. Anyway, so genre is like the category of story or world element that you have. Like, best way to say that is through example. So like when we talk about science fiction, horror, fantasy, things like that.
Right.
Those are like your genres.
Mm-hmm.
Theme is an overall set of principles
Yes.
that goes into your story. So like, you got your conflicts, like your, person versus nature or your things like that. Those
Conflicts
are
are
your
the
themes.
things that tend to drive a story, so it's very important to choose a conflict that can sustain the entirety of your arc,
Yes.
or at least have one that can very nicely and easily segue into other things.
So then style is it realistic? Is it fantastical? Is it humorous? Things like that. Style, theme, and genre get muddled a lot with people.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think it has. I think a lot of just particularly to a role playing type focus. I think a lot of people confuse those very easily.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy concept to get confused because there are, of course, elements of style within genre.
Mm-hmm.
And there are elements of theme that only work in certain genre.
Right.
Unless you get real creative with it, which, yeah,
That's
he
what
does.
I like to break genres. That's
Yep.
that's just how I roll.
Yeah, and honestly, it works. And what you have to decide as a writer, as the grand poobah of all things that are your world that you are building, you have to decide what things make the most sense to you for your writing style, for what it is that you're trying to accomplish. For example, writing for a TTRPG is going to be completely different in most cases than writing a story. There are similarities, obviously. The theme is going to be the same. The genre is going to be the same. Hey, Eric, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, welcome back, Mr. Stark.
Yeah. So, yeah, there are a lot of different aspects of that happen. And you can mix genre and mix style and mix theme with wild abandon. But, if you want to go for easy mode, the first thing you ought to do is try to match those things as best you can. Like, obviously, writing a noir script, for example, you're probably not going to set that in the 1600s. I mean, you might. But
well, one could.
One could, yeah. But, like, if you're first starting out
Mm-hmm.
and you're first trying to kind of, like, find a voice and a theme, it was really an interesting thing. A lot of the classes that I took in college, they would talk a lot about giving yourself rails, putting yourself on rails. The idea of a haiku where there have to be 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables.
Very strict structure.
Very strict structure. And then after you've written in that genre about as much as you can take, throwing that all out the window and allowing yourself to express and explore. I think about it like, we talk about decision paralysis pretty frequently, I think. In this particular case, it kind of takes that out of the equation because, okay, when you're writing haiku, you literally have only so many words that you can put in each part of the stanza, right? So in that, you're kind of on the rails, and then you remove those rails and allow yourself to fully explore the space. So when first starting out, it's usually a good idea to pick a similar theme, genre, and style. But don't stick there for too long, unless you enjoy it. I mean, of course, some folks only write noir, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And some folks only write fantasy fiction, and that's cool too. But give yourself those rails so that you can then throw those rails out the window.
It's kind of like the when we talked earlier last episode, I think,
Yeah.
about the blues.
Yes.
So it's at its core, very structured. The tropes of the particular musical style
Yes.
are very well established.
Yeah. The first line of the blues is always repeated twice. And there's always a 12-bar thing that goes on, right? And it's maybe in a different key, but it's always going to be those same interval changes for those who speak music, which I realize not everybody speaks music.
Right, and that's
I barely speak music.
That's kind of the overarching idea behind genre.
Yeah.
Is that you have certain characteristics, and literary critics and historians and whatnot will argue what those particular elements are to each genre, but
We aren't here to argue.
we're not doing that.
Fuck that.
But the bottom line is you've got basically, just like any psychosocial construct, right? It's just a way to communicate more quickly and efficiently what you're trying to do. Yes. Like when you say, this is a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
Right?
You already have some vague clue
Right.
of what that's going to entail.
Now, for some folks, that might look like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Some folks, that might look like Game of Thrones. Some folks, that might look like the Xanth series by Piers Anthony. Everybody, when in your head, when you hear fantasy, what do you think?
Dragons.
Dragons. Dargons.
Dragon. Yeah.
Do they burninate the countryside?
Well, of course, yes.
There you go.
That's literally what dragons
Are they
do.
a dragon and a man?
Not usually, no. There are some furry pieces and some I'm trying to think of what they are. Fan sub, not fan sub.
Fan service?
No.
No?
Fan fiction.
No, fanfic.
That's what I'm thinking.
Fanfic.
There are some fanfics that go that direction, of
Mhm.
course, and that's what makes genre so interesting. Is because you can take this base level thing, like it's a construct of an idea, like the Platonian construct, right, of an idea, and it's the ideal of that genre, and you've got that ideal, and then you're just working within that constraint. But it's good if you have the ability to mix genre and to play with style and to play with theme. It's good if you are able to do that. But as an early off writer, I say put yourself on the rails first, then remove them. Because, of course, you want to learn about the particular ways that things can go together and things can operate in that space, So that's generally my advice.
Yeah.
But, for new writers, if you've been writing for a while, then you already know this stuff probably. the rails that academia typically uses. You're going to be talking about short essay, which is great. You know, who doesn't love a short essay?
I know I do.
Yeah, yeah. But usually it's like a research essay, or it's, you know, a comparison essay where you're writing about two completely similar things, or sometimes they might even tell you to write about two completely contrarian things, like cows and bowling balls, or, you know, televisions and cat suits, you know, whatever it is that might come up. And you have to like try to work within those constructs. And again, that's how the academic system typically works. Now, that doesn't work for everybody. You know, let's face facts. If you are neurodivergent, such as Steve or myself, that may not work for you. And that's okay. You just keep trying. The best advice that I can give a writer of any sort, it doesn't matter if you're dealing with TTRPG or any other genre, just write. Just make yourself write for like 30 minutes a day. Start out at 5 minutes a day. And then just make yourself write. Don't edit. Don't make it happen as you go. Just put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and write. And write for, you know, just 5 minutes to start out. And then just keep incrementally moving yourself up. Because as you write those 5 minutes, what you're going to find happens after those 5 minutes is that there are still ideas coming. And when you hit that point where you've written that 5 minutes and then there are more ideas coming, you keep writing. Even if it's past your 5 minute allotment, you know, you're not, hopefully, now, you might be critical of yourself like I am, but like, hopefully you understand and you're able to kind of be soft to yourself and, you know, not be such a meanie head to yourself.
Self-compassion.
Self-compassion. Yeah. It's been kind of my theme of the week. Yeah. But here's the thing, though, Eric, is that there is style and challenge to it. And the reason that there's style and challenge to it is because it's your own unique take. So you can make those comparisons very, very obtuse. You can make those comparisons into anything you want. So, yeah, it's not the most skillful thing in the world or whatever, but it can be challenging, especially if you throw additional roadblocks in your own way. And I know I like to throw additional roadblocks in my way whenever possible.
Sure.
It's like, okay, well, this is a story set in modern day. What's the catch?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have guns. They all fight with swords. And they're in gangs. You know? Like, why did you do that to yourself? Because I could, damn it.
Absolutely.
Because I like pointy, sharp things. Pointy, sharp things
Who
make me happy.
doesn't?
Of course.
So the interesting, just something that kind of sprung to mind as we were just kind of going through that. The thing for me that I think really is both similar and different between writing for tabletop role-playing versus writing for story, you know, writing prose, right?
Yeah.
Is the idea that and when you're writing prose, world building and plot production are all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're writing for tabletop, things are, they're kind of sussed out. Like, for example, you can do world building and setting design and have absolutely no connection to plot whatsoever.
Yeah, it's true.
Whereas if you're writing a story, now generally how I write, I mean, I know, we have slightly different writing
you
styles.
could say that.
But how I write is very organic and very stream of consciousness. I just get on the keyboard, get the the notebook and just start writing, typing, what have you.
Yeah.
And I put out a lot of crap.
That's how you write. You put out a lot of
Right.
crap, and then you find the gold within
Yes,
that crap.
you sift through that crap and you find diamonds. Because that
everybody
analogy
loves-
does not work in any way in reality. However, it works in writing.
It does.
You're welcome.
It does. Yeah. But what Steve said there is actually really true, because when you're talking about a tabletop RPG environment, you're not singularly storytelling. You're group storytelling is essentially what you're doing.
Interactive.
You're doing an interactive
Yes.
storytelling session. That means the plot can't necessarily be all sussed out. Like, you can have a plot point, and you can write that plot point, but you don't know what's going to happen at that plot point, and you don't even know if your characters are going to manage to even get there, because somebody, this bitch right here, is going to sidetrack you. Because that looks like danger. No, thank you. I'm going to take this other pathway and avoid the entirety of this carefully constructed arc that you have created.
It does happen.
And it happens frequently.
But, yeah,
you got to kind of think on your feet as a DM. It's the way it goes.
Yep. And, not to get too much into the weeds of, DMing tips, because that's, like I've said before, there are 1,000 podcasts about that. We're not going to duplicate that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think everyone who's ever played a role-playing game knows is the pain of an overly railroading DM.
Yes.
Right? So there's the free form, which is just open world, you guys do whatever you want and I'll just deal with it, because I've built this expansive world with all these different plot seeds and different things that you can explore and so on and so forth.
Right.
Very, Breath of the Wild-y kind of deal.
Yeah.
Or more Skyrim.
Well, they're very similar.
Yeah,
sorta.
that's true.
Yeah. But yeah, that is true. Is that if you're the big thing is that you have to build the place for people to hang out first. So let's talk a little about genre then.
Okay.
What is your favorite genre to world build for?
Okay, so are we? So the question you asked is, what is my favorite genre to world build for?
That is exactly the question I asked.
Okay, so...
Are you trying to extend for time?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But I'm trying to suss out are we talking about my favorite or the one I have most experience with?
Your favorite!
Okay, I'm just making sure. So there's favorite in terms of what do I find myself doing most frequently, and then there's favorite as in what really gets me going.
What really gets you going?
I like dark fantasy. Maybe even into horror.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
The thing I don't like about horror is the reliance upon suspense as a mechanism.
Fuck suspense.
I'm not real big on that. I mean, there's a certain amount that's acceptable, but generally it makes people anxious, and I'm just not down for all that. But
thank you, Marwan. Saying the shit I didn't.
All y'all.
We're all going to jail. I know, it's fine.
Marwan's just lucky that we're not playing a game anytime in the near future. And by the time we do play again, I will have forgotten all this. Because if it could be tomorrow, I would have forgotten all this. Because that's how I am.
It'll be later this evening.
Yeah. No, I'll wake up at 2 in the morning and say, Marwan! Anyway, so...
Which will concern the dog and the cats.
Who's Marwan? Emma will be like, he's here? That's cool.
Oh, all right.
So, the thing that really got me going when, I started role-playing in the D&D Tolkien-esque fantasy,
I think that's where everybody started for the most part.
Generally.
You've got that, or you've got, riffs. Right.
Well, it depends on what year a person started playing.
That's also true, yes.
Because there's a lot of folks, who, if they started, in the mid-90s, they started in on, the cyberpunk times.
Exactly.
Or a lot of people's first introduction into role-playing was Battletech. Or Mech Warrior, the role-playing form of Battletech.
I didn't know that it existed. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's a hot game. I'm just saying. It's pretty simple, but it's very combat-oriented. But the point being, fantasy is a big draw for a lot of people. Cyberpunk, fuck yes, Cyberpunk. I'm just going to ask real quick. You can answer whenever you get to it. Are we talking Cyberpunk, like Cyberpunk 2020, or are we talking Shadowrun? Because those are very different things. And put a pin in that, and we'll come back to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So for me, the thing that really got me going when I got away from more of that traditional Tolkien-esque type fantasy was the AD&D setting of Ravenloft, which is a gothic dark fantasy type setting.
Yeah.
And that's, surprise, surprise, the goth. Really into gothic stuff. Go figure. But then from there, the gateway, yes.
Okay, he started with Champions. Shadowrun, please.
Shadowrun. I
Yep.
love Shadowrun.
Yep.
Haven't played it in years, but I do love it. I love the setting. I love the world they built.
It's a lovely world.
World building. Ding. Anyway, but what I transitioned through Ravenloft into the World of Darkness from White Wolf Games. And that gothic mixture of it's gothic punk, but that mixture of noir and just institutionalized hopelessness, I guess. And it's just something really, really appealed to the edgelord within me, as a teenager.
You are an insufferable
Insufferable edgelord. Yep.
Yeah.
All that William Gibson.
Yep. Yep.
But do androids dream of electric sheep? That's the question. Anyway,
we own that
that's
book.
Philip Dick.
Yeah.
If anybody knows.
Somebody knows.
We know
I'm
all
sure.
about Dick.
We are live streaming on YouTube.
Oh, that's right.
They care about shit.
I'm talking about Philip Dick. I'm talking about an author. I'm very knowledgeable on the catalog of Dick. I'm just the thing I know about. That's right.
What
there.
would a world-building livecast be without the constant sexual innuendo? That's all
I'm
I'm
not
saying.
innuendizing anything. I'm just talking about
Mm-hmm.
PK Dick. All right, so, but to answer your question, when I think back to the thing that really lit the fire for me, it's that gothic fantasy type genre. But
Gotcha.
more recently, I like some sillier stuff.
You like beer?
No, not really. Not
No,
like that.
Not like that.
Like that. I like sillier stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, favorite genre has been covered.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite theme?
My favorite theme is the concept things are not what they seem.
Okay. I could see that. Yeah.
The idea that there is a veneer of ideas that are presented, and then as time goes on and we start to pick that apart, we start to realize, oh, there's another layer underneath, much like an onion.
Or cake.
Or lasagna. Really, anything with layers is great.
Yeah. Lasagna is just spaghetti cake.
It's just spaghetti cake.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a theme I find myself with quite a bit, just kind of setting with the idea, and also that the theme of the good guys are sometimes the bad guys, or sometimes the bad guys used to be the good guys, and then the kind of that interspersing of
Right. And
lines.
they changed their tune.
Yep.
Like good guys and bad guys often do. Okay. So, we've covered genre and theme. What is your favorite style?
I guess that's where the silliness comes in, right? That's the kind of the trope bending, genre mashing, just chaos.
Absolute chaos.
Absolute chaos made living.
Chaos.
My DMing style is chaotic neutral. I can't help it. I am what I am.
Yep. It's true. But yeah, so we've covered those things now, and we've talked a little bit about your favorite themes and genres and whatnot. Put those three together for us right now and give us a 2-minute story.
Okay, so combining gothic horror with the line of good and evil being blurred
Yeah.
with
Comedy.
Monty Python-esque comedy.
Yep. 2 minutes. Starting now.
Oh, I'm not great with that. So, there once was a man from Nantucket. No, I'm a little on the spot. Sorry.
Well, yeah, of course. It's okay. Give it time.
Well, I've got less time now because I've got 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, okay. 2 minutes starting from the time that you actually start.
Okay, so we got a a lord, right? A landholder.
Mm-hmm.
And this landholder so coveted his or her, let's say his, because, whatever.
Right.
His place within the area in which his domain, right?
Does the domain have a name?
The domain is named Carpathia.
Carpathia.
Now I'm just telling the story of Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
So the landowner so coveted his place and his title that he found himself pushing away every person and every relationship that he had till eventually he became part of the land.
All right.
And he became cursed by it. So therefore now he must live out his eternity defending this non-existent ideal of what once was.
And the Python twist? Pythonian twist?
It's a cardboard box.
There you go. All right. I knew you could do it.
Thank you.
I knew you could do it.
But you got to pull back. He's sitting inside of it, and you only get the tight focus. And then as time goes on...
Wait. I can do this. Hang on. Hold up. I got this. And... Okay. There you go.
So he's sitting inside his domain. He's rolling around a glass of brandy.
Yeah.
Which camera am I on?
You're on that one.
Okay. Rolling around a glass of brandy. Tight focus on his lips as he takes a drink. He looks out, thinks about what once was, thinks of all he has lost. Camera pulls back. You start to see...
And I'm a cardboard box.
The cardboard. Right here. Right next to his head.
Right next to his head.
Bus drives by, splashes. The entire domain is destroyed. Because it's all it is ever a clever illusion.
There you go.
But that's more tragic than funny. That's just sad.
That's kind of funny,
And
too.
now for something completely different.
Like, maybe he actually does have a house behind him, and he's just
Yeah.
choosing to stay in the cardboard box.
Because he so loved the box that he gave up the castle.
Yeah. So he's still got a place to live. It's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Happy ever after and all that. Yep. But yeah, so that was a really good exercise. I like that one. You guys should try that out. And put a video on YouTube and tag us in it, or tag us in the description and in the comments.
Hashtag 2-minute story.
Hashtag 2-minute story. There you go. And I'm gonna write that down so that I remember to pimp that later. Yep, that's window minute story. Okay. So hashtag 2-minute story. Hit us with your stories. Tag us. Twitter, we are at Dunnecast. On here, we're the Dunnes, or Dunne and Dunne. And you can hashtag it Dunne and Dunne, and then just at the Dunnes. And that should get through to us. And, yeah.
So when making a world, whether it's for prose or for role playing, I think before I do anything, before I have any ideas about, what I want it to be, how I want it to be, I pick a genre first.
Right, okay.
So, it's like, is it going to be, it's going to be fantasy, is it going to be horror, is it going to be more predominantly one or the other, because
right.
these things can, and we'll get into that, these things can skirt back and forth.
Yep.
So, and then once I've determined what the genre is, and again for tabletop role-playing, that helps you greatly inform what game system you're going to be looking at.
Yeah.
Because certain ones are geared towards certain genres.
Exactly.
So, of course, we all know the big guy is a fantasy game, right? Dungeons and Dragons.
All right. So for your story about Lord Cardboardington.
Lord Cardboardington. Oh, Lord Corrigan.
Lord Corrigan. All right.
Lord Corrigan.
Lord Corrigan. What's his game system?
I think that would be a good. Dungeons and Dragons system.
Okay.
I think that could work.
But cardboard doesn't exist then.
That's true. but that's what we call an anachronism. You can do that too. So probably, I cheat a little and say something, a universal system like a GURPS, because then anything can exist, or like a Savage Worlds. But, if you're sticking strictly modern, I would go with like a World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, something like that.
Gotcha. So Eric mentioned that his favorite style is realism, I guess. I wanted to make a note about that. And this is going to kind of get a little into the weeds, so bear with me. Realism is actually what my primary tool is.
Mm-hmm.
And that may sound really weird because of some of the odd-ass ideas I come up with, but most of my stuff is based completely in reality, or could conceivably happen. There's just like one thing that's a little off. And the reason that I write that way is because if you've ever played a video game, like let's just take Resident Evil 4, for example. Okay.
What are you buying?
What are you buying? What are you selling? What are you getting sawed by? Oh, guess what? It's a chainsaw.
El Chainsaw Cabra.
Right. But okay, so if you were to take more aspects of realism and put them in that game, because it's kind of pseudo-realistic, right? Your inventory has slots, and there's only so much shit you can actually carry within your little suitcase or your briefcase.
Yeah.
Because you've got slots, and that's what you've got. You mix two things that are a healing item. You can put that on. Cool. But if you were to take that game and make it like hyper-realistic, those healing items wouldn't help if your arm had gotten chopped off, which is quite likely in that game scenario. You're dealing with zombies with chainsaws. So the chances of losing appendages are exponentially high. And when you start bringing a lot of realism into it, like a great deal of realism, where like, okay, you have to sleep at night. Where are you going to sleep and be safe while sleeping?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have run out of bullets and you're not as strong as that zombie in real life. What are you going to do then? So realism to a point, I think, is a lot of fun. But when you're dealing with especially storytelling, like getting hyper realistic, it's really hard to write after a certain point, because then it's no longer exercise. Then it's reality. So yes, reality's cool. And realism is definitely my genre, don't get me wrong. But realism to a point. And you want to be able to suspend the realism enough that it's a thing. But you don't want to go so overboard that it becomes just full candy canes and gumdrops and here we are. Just walking through Candyland. Here we go. Yep, this is realistic, all right. Yep, that tree is made of peppermint. That's realism. It's not. So, that would be my only caution. But definitely my genre. So, anyhow, what else can we think about here? How do you feel about realism?
I generally don't have much realism in my... Now, there are some aspects and elements of realism. Like, when I'm world building, I try and generally I try and think about scientific theory and things that would work theoretically. Like, the big fantasy setting that I have is built on the concept of a post-nuclear apocalypse, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's the idea of how would society fold in a post-nuclear type environment.
Yeah.
But because, talking about magical realism, right?
Yeah.
So when the concept of magic exists, then you've got, well, how does that
even
interplay?
How does that even?
How does that even?
Yeah.
So for me, I guess if somebody were to look at my stuff, they'd say, there's not a lot of realism really.
Right.
Because, I mean, especially with game mechanics, I don't care about encumbrance. I don't care about rations. That's not heroic to me.
Right, because the truth of the matter is, if you had been a heroing adventurer, you
Yeah.
would know exactly the amount of things to keep on you, and
Yep.
you would likely have those things on you. And if you didn't have those things on you, you would either forge or buy those things.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a great construct, it's a great exercise, but generally, it's not what the game's about. The game's about enjoying a story and telling a story with friends.
Yeah.
You know?
Generally, people don't want to role play having to go to Staples and buy paper for their computer because they're trying to print something out that's important for the adventure.
Yep.
That's just, it's like, okay, we can assume this happened.
Right. And, if it's not going to affect the plot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, you can't just... Oh, here we are. We're out of focus. There we go. You can't just... well, maybe you can, but, if you have a key item, like in our last campaign, Steve had a couple of key items that our party had to pick up. If he had made it so that our party just magically had those items already, well, where's the adventure? Where's the conflict? Where's any of that? Mm-hmm. There has to be a reasonable idea of conflict or something that's going to push the story forward.
Yep.
So, but yeah, okay. So I'm going to give myself the same exercise I gave you.
Okay, 2-minute story.
2-minute story. So, all right. So there's this lady. She's living in an urban place, in some sort of urban city. We'll call it Uniopolis. She's living in Uniopolis. She is a baker. She works for a bakery. So day in and day out, she makes croissants. And croissants are a very intensive process. You have to have the dough, and then you have to have these slabs of butter. You wrap the dough around it. You roll out the dough, and then you put it in the chill chest for a little while, and then you have to take it back out. You have to do the same thing again with more butter, and you do this like 2 or 3 times during the making of the croissants, right? And so she's built like a brick shit house. So one day, somebody comes to her because they need help, and they need help of somebody that has a particular kind of strength, and they feel like she's probably the one that's going to have the particular kind of strength. So she has a choice that she can help this individual, but then she finds out through another customer at her bakery that that individual maybe doesn't have her best interest at heart, but they're willing to pay her a very large sum of money, of course, because it's a bakery and times being what they are, whatever they are. She wants to take him up on it because she really does need the extra money. She's got people to cover her time and whatever else. So she goes out on this adventure, and through her massive arm strength from rolling out croissants, and, of course she uses a rolling pin as her weapon of choice, because why wouldn't she use a rolling pin as her weapon of choice? She is able to, she goes on a lot of adventures, and a lot of things happen to her. And it turns out he didn't have her best needs at heart, but she was able to roll him into some croissants, so it was fine.
There you go. And, okay, so same questions. Genre.
Modern realism.
Okay. So, theme.
Person overcoming adversity.
Okay. And what is the style of the setting?
D style.
D style?
It's like freestyle, but different.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yep. Yes. So, I guess it would be, I'm trying to think, because there is an actual answer to that. Okay, what's the style on that? Well, you're talking about, it's realistic. There is some stuff going on. I don't know. It's a story I brought out into the world. So again, hashtag 2-minute story, at Dunne and Dunne, at Dunnecast, at wherever on all the socials. Hit us with your 2-minute story. If you can videotape it, even better. If not, no worries.
So just to touch on what you had talked about earlier, some genres are more equipped for certain themes, for telling certain kinds of stories.
Right.
So we talk about the gothic horror, the gothic punk, right?
Right.
This is more introspective type stories. These are less stories about
kicking butt and taking names.
Right,
More about what's going on the inside.
Right. You're not going to take that gothic, which is really a style, and look at it, you're not going to tell the story of the Avengers, for example, in that kind of setting.
Right.
But, you can still take a superhero story and tell it in that mode.
Yes. And one of the stories I like to point out to people when they're talking about, like, well, how do you push a story along without much conflict? What do you do? I point out the book, The Sound of Waves, and I can't remember who it's by, but it is a Japanese author. It is right around the World War II era, and it's essentially this fisherman, and he's in love with this woman, and they meet up, and things happen. But it's just a nice, quiet book. Like, nothing real majorly bad happens, but nothing really exciting happens either. It's just a very sort of book. But it's really well written, which is amazing considering it's a translation. But yeah, it's very well written, and it's definitely got its own theme, and it's definitely post-World War II, and there's definitely things going on within that book, but it's not like grab your balls and force you to the place that we want you to go.
Right. So by comparison, because it is a post-war kind of setting, kind of film or
Right.
film
Book.
Compared with like like an Ernest Hemingway, right, which is very, talking about action, talking about people do things. It's not introspective. It's not about people's emotions about a thing. It's just people do things, which I think a lot of your fantasy role-playing gets put into that genre.
Yes.
Or that mode of storytelling.
It absolutely does. It does get stuck in that genre. And the thing is if you're doing a role-playing setting, you can set it anywhere. As long as you have a base level of rules, you can build any world you want. We talked a little about this yesterday because I'm a witch, and with witches we talk a lot about manifestation and how to build things. But here's the thing is, like, with witches, we actually do this with our real life as well. We imagine what it is that we want to see in our lives, and we goal set toward those things. And that can work for anybody, really.
Absolutely.
And I think the big thing to know is, what's your tone? Is your tone serious, or is your tone Monty Python on drugs? Mine is always underneath Monty Python on drugs. It's just always, if you rip it down a little, it's just, you can already hear them talking about all the things. So, I know that about myself. I know that I have ability to write serious scenes, but by and large, most of what I do is just like a very thin, glossy sheen over complete and utter chaos. And I'm good with it.
Yeah.
But, and also, like, you got to figure out, like, do you want this to be a very structured sort of world? In my case, my worlds don't have much structure. It's just, okay, there are systems in place. There's its own kinds of gravity. There's its own kinds of physics. There's its own kinds of things. And because I'm creating all those things, I don't have to necessarily be aware of how it actually works in the real world, because I'm creating that thing. Doesn't work so well on the realistic manifestation front, but it works really well for me as a person.
Well, the thing, you talk about realism, but the thing is, as long as it's internally consistent within itself, it does have a sense of realism to it.
Absolutely, yes.
Because it
makes sense within the milieu of the story.
Right. The thing about fantasy, or, kind of any magical type setting, is that the rules are constantly in flux. The rules of reality, the rules of, like, physical manifestations are constantly moving. Whereas in something that embraces more of a static realism, is these things, even if they're wacky.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you have a setting of it's in a spacecraft, right?
Yeah.
So that would be very different from being on a planet, because gravity is different. The way you get food is different. The way you go about your life is just fundamentally different.
Yeah.
But it's still realistic because it
And
has
it's
internal consistency.
And it's still normal in the milieu of the character's life.
Yep.
The character, like, you know, if okay, let's take a character from one of my more modern pieces and say, okay, they're walking along and then they look up and they see a purple elephant. How is my character going to react to that purple elephant? What are they going to do? Is that normal within the milieu of their story? Or is that a new thing? If that's a new thing, how do they react to new things? This is a bit about characterization, which is not so much the things that we're going to be talking about on this live cast. Because characterization, yes, very important, but there's a million different ways of taking care of that. May I recommend a character analysis sheet? You can find these online. Uta Hagman, she has a book. Go look up character analysis. It's
later we will be getting into that because part of any world is your NPCs.
Yep.
Or your supporting characters.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to know within the milieu of the story the thing that makes sense and the thing that doesn't make sense. And that's what I was talking about the mixing of style and genre and whatever the other thing was. Theme, yes. Because when you mix those things, a purple elephant showing up in pretty much any setting but a fantasy setting is going to be an event. It may not be a super important event. It's going to be an incredibly silly event no matter what. Well, unless it's purple and grows horns and tusks and starts roaring and running around the neighborhood and burning down the town. Okay, that's a little bit more of a danger thing. But at first, on the first impression of that purple elephant, you're going to say, that doesn't belong there. That's purple elephant. And what?
Unless you've already established as part of the setting that this frequently occurs.
All of your characters are purple elephants now.
Or even just, it's like, hey, this town, we know that it is very common for, let's say, skeletal rats are a thing that exists. So it's like, that's really fucking weird.
Yeah.
But
it's just for this town.
Within the milieu of this particular setting that you're having this group of encounters, this is normal.
Right.
The Skelly Boys are a normal part of this.
Right, yes. And he does this a lot between towns within his campaigns. Mm-hmm. Where one town, like, I believe it was Firston and the Secondton.
Well, that's what you guys called them, but yeah.
Yeah. But they had actual names, but, like, it was funny because he was trying to think of an idea for the third town, and I said, well, you know what, you just call it Thirdton. And
there it is.
Then I told everybody that that's why it was named Thirdton. And they then started calling them Firston and Secondton. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like how if we find something in one of our Let's Plays that is funny, like a little B-man, I'll be like, Howard Beeman. That is his name now. Mm-hmm. Or if you guys have ever watched Binging with Baba, she talks about his saucepan. It's funny to me.
It's hilarious. It is good stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not like break your back funny, but it's a little bit funny.
Sometimes humor is in subtlety,
Right, and you don't have to hit people over the head with it. Or if you do, I mean, use a light hammer, I guess. Yeah.
So once you've established what genre you want to go with, right, then you move on into I like to do style next. Yeah. So, like, what kind of, like, okay, we've established it's a fantasy setting.
Okay, got it.
So, is it going to be wacky fantasy, or is it going to be, like, grimdark, right? So, we've teased those two apart, and there's a whole continuum in between those.
Right.
And then from there, then you start getting a little bit into, this is kind of where the line between plot and setting get a little bit muddy, but the idea of overall themes. Like, each story will have its own theme, but then the world itself, it's like, is this a world in ruin, like a post-apocalyptic setting? Right. Is this a world in which there is a crisis to come?
Right.
Or,
has the crisis been foretold?
The prophecy dictates.
Who foretold it? What happened there?
Right.
But yeah, so if you've got the genre set up and now you're working on the theme, what themes would you incorporate there?
With like the
fantasy setting genre.
Okay.
So you were talking about, in particular, you're talking about, okay, dark and gritty versus comedic.
Right. So, I mean, it would really depend on which way you went with that as far as what themes would be appropriate. Like if you're in a grim dark setting, themes about the mortality of man, themes about the futility of existence. What the fuck are we even doing, and why are we doing it? And then in that find
Monsters.
Well, that's where you find the hope.
Monsters.
Well, that's where you find the hope, right? It's like the glimmer of light in this world of just absolute shit. The diamond in the shit, to go back to the old analogy, is that you are this champion of the people or whatever. You're, even though the likelihood of you, completing your task is pretty low, you're still going to do it because, damn it, that's what you need to do. So, yeah, that's the idea of, and then, and obviously the super wacky, super happy fun, super wacky, like Adventure Time, right?
Right.
So,
I want to see you write a TTRPG in the setting of Adventure Time.
Oh, I mean, it's almost Tarmac. I mean, they're very, very similar. It's just more cartoony.
Right, no, but they're different.
Yeah.
They're different.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
But, I want to encourage you all, as we're coming up to the end of the episode, I do want to encourage you all to consider how your choices with genre and theme and style affect your overall storytelling, your overarching theme.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about it. When you're building that world, what are some of the genres that you are most drawn to? What's the genre that you feel should exist but doesn't exist yet? What within the milieu of that genre makes sense stylistically? What within the milieu of that genre makes sense thematically? Think about all of that. And that's a good way to kind of build your world, like the 2-minute story idea. That's a really good way to build a world. It's like, okay, here's my setting, here's my theme, here's my style. So, yeah.
Bingo, bango.
And that's that. So, again, want to encourage you all to send us in those 2-minute stories. You can find us at Dunnecast. You can find us on Facebook at DunneCon. You can find us here. If you post it on YouTube, you can just at The Dunnes is how we come up.
Yeah.
You can give it to us on Instagram at Dunne and Dunne. You can give it to us on TikTok at Technolich or Violent Ivy 1980. And just tag us in those videos. We want to see what you guys come up with in those 2-minute stories. And at the end, if you can identify a genre, a theme, and a style, give it to us. We want to hear it.
And we're going to give you one more piece of homework.
What's
but
that?
This is going to be a group assignment.
Uh-oh. I don't like it.
During the course of this show, the run of this, we're going to build a world together.
So think about the genres, themes, and styles that you'd like to see in that world. And you can email us at thedunnesuem@gmail.com and send us those ideas. And we'll build it together. And if you guys don't come up with anything, no worries. Steve and I can't. We got this handled, but we'd like to hear your input.
I build worlds like I breathe. So
yeah. He comes up with more projects to do than I can even look at. So Steve can handle that.
It's a curse.
Yeah.
All right, well,
we'll
thanks.
see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, the 25th.
So we'll see you again on the 25th. So think about your genre, theme, and world. Or genre, theme. Genre, theme, and style.
Yep.
And think about what kind of world you'd like to build with all these other folks that are watching today. And even if you're not watching us live, you can still do those things. You can still participate. You can still get involved. And we'd love to see it. We really would like to make this a community-based thing. We'd like to build a community around it. So please do help us out in that regard. In the meantime, we at Your Weird Parents Enterprises want to remind you to stride confidently forward in your weirdness. And we will see y'all in 2 weeks with our live. And please check out the rest of our YouTube content.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Mwah.
Mwah.